Welcome back to Life Trends, the place where real emotions, tough choices, and unforgettable life lessons come alive. Today's story will touch your heart, make you think, and maybe even remind you of the value of family. So sit back, listen closely, because what I'm about to share is not just a story, it's a wake-up call. My name is Daniel, and this is the hardest memory I've ever had to revisit. It was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. My son was graduating, the first in our family to walk across that stage, wearing his cap and gown, ready to step into a brighter future. I worked my fingers to the bone for that moment, sacrificed everything so he could reach higher than I ever could. But instead of pride filling my heart, his words that day broke me into pieces I still can't glue back together. You see, life hasn't been easy for me. I wasn't born with money. I wasn't born with connections. I was born with calloused hands, tired eyes, and a heart that only knew how to love my boy. His mother left when he was still little, and from that day on, it was just me and him against the world. I took every shift I could, fixed cars in the morning, worked construction in the afternoon, and sometimes cleaned floors at night. My dream was simple: make sure my boy never went to bed hungry and never felt like he had less than other kids. But kids don't always see sacrifice. They only see what's missing. While other kids had shiny shoes, brand new phones, and parents driving them to school in fancy cars, my son had hand-me-downs, patched up sneakers, and a dad who often showed up late because I was coming straight from work. I thought he understood. I thought he knew my love was worth more than money. But standing there at his graduation, I realized he had grown ashamed of me. When I arrived that day, I wore my one clean shirt, pressed as neatly as I could manage. My hands were rough, stained with grease that no amount of soap could fully wash away. I didn't care. I was just proud. I was ready to clap, to cheer, to shout his name when he crossed that stage. But when he spotted me in the crowd, something in his eyes shifted. It wasn't joy. It wasn't pride. It was embarrassment. After the ceremony, families gathered to take pictures, hugging their kids, celebrating. I rushed forward, smiling wide, reaching out for him. But instead of embracing me, he pulled back. And then, in front of his friends, in front of teachers, in front of the very people I worked my whole life to earn respect from, my son looked me in the eye and said, "Don't come near me like that. You look like a bum." I swear my heart stopped beating in that moment. My ears rang. My smile froze. I thought I misheard him. I thought maybe it was a joke, a slip of the tongue. But no. His friends laughed nervously, and he turned his back to me like I was some stranger off the street. A bum. That's what he called me. The man who fed him, clothed him, gave up sleep and health and dreams so he could have this very day. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and remind him of all those nights I worked double shifts while he slept safely in his bed. I wanted to remind him who stood by him when no one else did. But my throat tightened and no words came out. Instead, I stood there silently, holding back tears, pretending his words didn't cut deeper than any knife. Parents around me smiled at their children, taking pictures, hugging close. And I stood alone, invisible, unwanted, humiliated. My son, my own flesh and blood, treated me like a stain he wanted to hide. I walked away before he could say anything worse. My steps felt heavier than ever, and each one echoed like a reminder of my failure. That night, I sat at home staring at the walls, asking myself where I went wrong. Did I spoil him by giving him everything I never had? Did I fail by not teaching him that money and appearances don't measure love? Or was it society, whispering in his ear that success means forgetting the people who got you there? I cried like I hadn't cried in years. And trust me, a man like me doesn't cry easily. But here's the truth. Pain has a way of teaching us lessons we never asked for. That night, I promised myself I wouldn't beg for my son's respect. If he couldn't see my worth after everything I did, then maybe life itself would have to teach him. And as much as it hurt, I knew one day he would remember who I was, not with shame, but with regret. What he forgot is that the same hands he mocked as rough and dirty were the hands that held him when he was sick, the hands that packed his school lunches, the hands that built the roof over his head. And while he might have seen me as a bum that day, I knew the truth. I was a father who gave everything. One day, he'd realize the weight of that. And that realization came sooner than he expected. The days after graduation felt empty. I went to work like always, but inside I was hollow. My coworkers noticed I was quieter than usual, but I didn't tell them what happened. How could I? How could I admit that my own son, the very reason I kept pushing through every storm, had thrown me aside like trash? I swallowed it down, kept my head low, and tried to convince myself it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than anything. Every night, I replayed the moment in my head. The way his eyes avoided mine, the way his friends snickered, the sound of that one word, bum. It echoed over and over, tearing at my heart. And yet, even through the pain, part of me still hoped he would call, that he would apologize, that he would realize how deeply he had hurt me. But days turned into weeks, and the phone never rang. Instead, I heard from neighbors and friends that my son was moving into a new apartment with some of his college buddies. He was stepping into his new life, a life he seemed to think I had no place in. I kept telling myself, that's what kids do. They grow up. They make mistakes. They'll come around. But deep down, I worried that I had truly lost him. One evening, I got a call from an old friend, a man who had been like a brother to me since childhood. He asked how I was doing, and I finally broke down. I told him everything, every detail, every word my son had said. Silence filled the line for a while, then my friend said something I'll never forget. Daniel, don't chase him. Let life chase him. Sometimes, kids don't appreciate the tree until they stand out in the sun with no shade. Those words hit me hard. For years, I had been the shade, the protection, the shelter for my boy. And now he thought he could live without it. Maybe he could. Maybe he couldn't. Either way, it wasn't my job to prove my worth anymore. I had already given everything. Months passed, and I kept living my life quietly. Work, home, work again. The loneliness weighed heavy, but I refused to let bitterness consume me. I reminded myself that love doesn't vanish, even when it's not returned. A parent's love is stubborn that way. Still, I prayed every night for my son, asking God to open his eyes, to soften his heart, to help him see the truth one day. And then, one night, the phone finally rang. His name flashed on the screen, and my heart skipped. I answered quickly, my voice shaking as I said, "Hello?" But instead of hearing excitement or joy, I heard panic. His voice was trembling, almost broken. "Dad," he whispered, "I messed up. I need you." In that moment, every ounce of pain I had carried vanished. I didn't ask what happened. I didn't remind him of what he said. I didn't hesitate. I just grabbed my keys and told him, "I'm on my way." Because that's what fathers do. No matter how deep the wounds, no matter how harsh the words, when your child calls for help, you answer. When I reached his apartment, the sight that greeted me stopped me cold. The place was a mess. Broken furniture, unpaid bills scattered on the floor, and my son sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. His eyes were red, his clothes wrinkled, and the confidence he had worn on graduation day was nowhere to be found. He looked small again, like the boy I used to carry on my shoulders. I sat beside him quietly, waiting for him to speak. Finally, he looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, I'm sorry. I thought I was ready for this life. I thought I didn't need you." But I was wrong. I can't even keep the lights on. My friends bailed on me when rent was due. I don't know what to do." Hearing those words, my chest tightened. Not because of his struggles, but because he finally saw the truth. He finally realized that strength isn't about pretending you don't need anyone. It's about knowing who has your back when the world falls apart. I placed my rough, worn hand on his shoulder, the same hand he once mocked. He flinched for a second, ashamed, but then he leaned into it like he had when he was a child. I said softly, "Son, I've been here all along. I'll help you. But you need to understand something. Respect isn't about money or clothes or what people think. Respect is about love, sacrifice, and loyalty. And I've given you all of that since the day you were born." He broke down then, sobbing in my arms. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean what I said that day. I was embarrassed, stupid, trying to impress people who don't even matter. I called you a bum, but you're the strongest man I know." Those words didn't erase the pain completely, but they began to heal the cracks in my heart. I realized that sometimes kids need to stumble before they can see clearly. My son had fallen, and it was life itself that taught him the lesson I couldn't. We spent the night cleaning up his place, going through his bills, and making a plan. I didn't fix everything for him, because this time he needed to learn responsibility. But I stood beside him, guiding him, showing him that I was still his father, not his enemy. As the sun rose the next morning, he looked at me with tired eyes and said, "Dad, I want to be better. I want to make you proud. I'll never treat you like that again." And for the first time in months, I smiled, not because the pain was gone, but because hope had returned. The weeks that followed felt like a slow rebuilding of something fragile, something both of us knew could break again if we weren't careful. My son kept his word. He worked harder than I had ever seen him work before. He picked up a part-time job to cover his bills, cut ties with the so-called friends who left him hanging, and started calling me every few days just to talk. At first, I almost didn't know how to respond. After all the silence, all the distance, suddenly hearing his voice felt both strange and comforting. But slowly, the walls between us began to fall. One evening, he came over for dinner. I cooked his favorite meal, something simple but filled with memories: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. As he sat at the table, I saw him looking around the small house, the house I had fought to keep all those years. His eyes softened, almost as if he was seeing it for the first time. "Dad," he said quietly, "I used to be embarrassed of this place. I thought it wasn't enough. But now, I realize it was everything. It was home." Those words nearly undid me. I nodded, not wanting to break the moment with too many tears, though they burned behind my eyes. It wasn't about the house itself. It was about what it represented. Love, sacrifice, shelter. The very things he had once taken for granted. As days turned into months, our bond grew stronger. We started spending weekends together again, fixing up his car, talking about his future, sharing laughs I thought were lost forever. One Sunday afternoon, he surprised me with something I'll never forget. He pulled out a small box and handed it to me. Inside was a watch, not expensive, but engraved on the back with the words, "To the man who gave me time when he had none to spare." I couldn't hold back my tears then. I hugged him tightly, and for the first time in a long time, I felt not just like his father, but like his hero again. But life is funny. It doesn't hand you closure neatly wrapped in a bow. Healing is messy. There were still days when I remembered his words at graduation and felt that sting. Some scars don't vanish completely. Yet, with every step forward, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing not to let it control the future. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip low, he turned to me and said, "Dad, I want you to come with me next week. There's an event at my college. I want everyone to meet you. I want them to know who raised me." I blinked in surprise. My heart pounded. Was this the same boy who once hid me in the shadows, calling me a bum? Now he wanted me to stand by his side, in front of everyone. The very thought made my chest ache, in a good way this time. When that day came, I wore the same clean shirt I had worn at his graduation, pressed neatly, though it was older now. My hands were still rough, still scarred, but I walked beside my son proudly. And this time, instead of shrinking back, he held his arm around my shoulders and introduced me to everyone as my dad, the hardest working man I know. The looks in their eyes weren't pity or judgment. They were respect. Respect not because of money or status, but because of truth. And in that moment, I realized the circle had closed. The pain of that graduation day would always be part of our story, but so would this moment of redemption. Later that night, as we drove home, my son said softly, "Dad, I'll never forget what I called you. But I hope one day, when people tell our story, they'll remember more than my mistake. I hope they'll remember how you never gave up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." I smiled through tears, gripping the steering wheel with tired hands that still had work left in them. "Son," I said, "that's what being a father is. It's not about being perfect. It's about being there. And I'll be there for you until my last breath." And for the first time in years, my heart felt light. Because despite everything, the shame, the hurt, the cruel word that once shattered me, I knew we had found our way back. He had forgotten who raised him once, but he would never forget again. So if you're listening to this story right now, maybe you're a parent who feels unappreciated, or maybe you're a child who hasn't said thank you in far too long. Remember this: love often goes unseen until the day we can't live without it. Don't wait until regret teaches you the value of family. Appreciate them now, while you still have the chance. Because one day, the person you called a bum might be the very reason you stand tall.